What up?
What up? What up? What's up?
Hey, I'll let you take the intro that time. But man, we back for another week. Hey y'all, we got another coach, episode 2 of that coaching series. I think this year we set out to give you guys different coaches than we have the first 2 years. I think we had some repeat coaches. I think this year we have a complete new lineup of 5 different new coaches. The coach is a guy behind the scenes. I seen him at Presidential last year. He actually had 2. He don't brag about it. He don't talk too much, but he actually had 2 men's physique guys in the final at last year's Jordan Cup. So I think he's one of the ones that go under the radar because people really don't know, but if they see his name, they know who we're talking about, but they probably can't put the face to the name. So I'm gonna quit talking. We got Eric Hannah, aka HannahBolics. This is a quick picture of the, I had to go find this. I had to dig up the archives. We got to go peep the archives. But welcome on, man. What's going on?
What's good, man? I'm glad to finally be on your coaching platform. As far as just being a guest, it's an honor and a privilege.
Man,
Huge fan.
Thanks for joining us.
Hey, I had to go find you cut up, man. I was like, I gotta find a picture of this dude. I was like, I went to your Instagram, scroll, and I found one.
Yeah, I've got several I can send you, but like as said before, I try to stay as low key behind the scenes and try to even seem like a person in disguise that's just a fan. That's just a fan backstage versus even trying to be a coach. But I'm seeing now it's probably better that they put a name with a face.
Absolutely.
Jamal, take us on to this. What we got?
All right. So I got 2 questions for you since we're talking about it. First of all, what got you into coaching? And the second part of that question is, do you think it's important for the coach to be low key and behind the scenes? Because some coaches want to be bigger than the athlete. So that's 2 parts. If you need me to remind you of the second part, just let me know and I'll remind you after we get through the first part.
I'll start with the second part first, and then I'll go into the background part of it.
Okay.
As far as for my platform, I think it's important because simply because my athletes, I think that they come first. The athlete comes first. I was once an athlete, and I never really truly had like a coach. I didn't know what coaching was. So for me, it's just better for my athlete to get credit. And I noticed when I stayed behind the scenes, I attracted a better quality of athletes, kind of being in secrecy, if that makes sense. I'll sometimes, I may get in a picture with an athlete, but I still try to stay away from just saying, even though I have a team, I try to stay away from just making it about a team. I try to make it about each individual and their individual goals, because bodybuilding, I don't see it as a team sport. Like, end of the day, if I have 2 physique athletes like I did at Jordan that were both in overall going against one another, yeah, you're a team, but when you're on that stage, you're competing. So only one person can be the best that day, As far as what got me into coaching, I'm a little bit older. I'll be 50 next year. So my backstory, I was competing, and of course, as I discussed before, I competed nothing but NPC shows. And so I had gotten beaten my second show. I had won, I think, the Arkansas State show in novice. And back then they had, they would mail your like the show promotions to you and the flyers and things. We didn't really have the internet kicking like it does now. So I just picked the show and I went and traveled and went to that show. And I got my butt handed to me. And so the guy that beat me, I said, "Who helped you with your diet?" And he said, well, this guy right here. And this guy, I can't say his name because he's a promoter. Of course, he's an NPC promoter. But I hired him that next year to help me with my diet. And honestly, he showed me a few things, but I kind of did things at my own pace and I overpaid him. And back then, as said before, you couldn't do the phone pictures or internet pictures. I had to drive down to Texas for him to look at me and come back. So I would be paying him to look at me and tell me I look great, but I never got a diet change. So this is back in 2001. That's how old I am. And so what ended up happening, I ended up just kind of doing my own thing after that. I still won, and I competed probably for about another 8 to 10 years at regional and tougher NPC shows throughout that time, of course, against enhanced athletes. So it gave me a different aspect. And so what got me basically into coaching, I started taking on people when I stepped away from it. I stepped away back in 2013 just because I had to get some business things handled, financial things in place. And so I didn't have time to be a competitor, but there were people that had a desire to compete and that was inspired off of my journey. And so I started taking on athletes back in 2013, and I didn't really consider myself a coach until I got my first IFBB Pro on a natural platform, and that was in 2017 in women's physique. And back then it was just really unheard of. And so that's kind of when I said, okay, maybe I'm a coach. And from that point, I continually just took on athletes. And like I said, with OCB coming into the scene in 2022, I kind of took really note of that and started putting more athletes into OCB shows. Even though I enter athletes in NPC shows, just to kind of get the fear away, I prefer to put them in OCB shows afterwards. That way, if they have any type of pro potential, they're not intimidated by an elite physique. And so at NPC shows, and it's no comparison, I don't try to compare either of the two, but if I put an athlete in a tougher show there and then they get their OCB Pro card, they're not going to be intimidated as far as being able to compete on stage. And so it's an equal playing field for everyone, but I want my athletes to have the greatest opportunity to become a natural world champion. And so I try to put them in a very uncomfortable, unfair, what people call unfair environment. Because if you can do good at an unfair environment, such as a non-tested show, you're going to do great at a natural pro show.
Okay.
I definitely like that approach. That was actually it wasn't my reasoning for doing my approach. It's just what happened to me because I started NPC. Then I did my first OCB show literally, I think 2 weeks after my third NPC show and won my pro card. But I think it is a psychology type thing of, hey, I just want to get some enhanced guys. Everybody here is natural, so you go in there with a more calmer state sometimes. So I definitely can understand that method. But you stated that once you stopped competing, you decided to coach. Was there, I know you say, some financial reasons and things of that nature. Do you think you'll ever, maybe come out in masters and show your guys how it's done, or you're done?
No, I won't do that. It depends. I always tell my athletes, if my lower half can come close to what it did back when I was competing in open bodybuilding as a middleweight and welter, then sure, because I would want to win. I left a winner, and so I wouldn't want to just come back and get a pity clap. And it's no knock to any masters competitor, but if I can't really come close to where I was for when I was competing at an elite level then against non-tested and competing as a natural athlete, then I probably won't. But this year I am making a commitment to at least getting in near contest shape and just kind of staying in functional shape. As far as my blood pressure, it's good and things like that. But for me, I kind of miss the aesthetics. I probably have not been in aesthetic shape in nearly 6 years. So my athletes are kind of on my butt about it. So like I said, I enjoy eating and I enjoy helping others. But for me, I'm going to get back in shape. And if my legs decide to do what they need to do as far as ham and glute tie-ins, and, as you get older, your leg mass kind of digresses, especially above that femur bone. If that flare doesn't pull out, then the legs will take on good lines, but you won't have that level of muscularity. So if my legs do what they need to do, hey, I'm going to go for masters.
Awesome. All right, we're at a day and age now where everybody calls themselves a coach. You see people now where they go get a pro card, they don't step on the pro stage or compete as a pro, but then they put coach in their bio and try to get clients or whatnot. So my question for you is, give me 3 things that makes a good coach in your eyes.
It takes one to know one. If you've never competed, nor if you've never had the background, I think every coach, it's just my opinion, you should have some type of competitive background. And then also the results. If you're not producing results of clientele, that they don't necessarily have to win, but you'll see people edit their clients' photos. I like, if you look at any of my clips, I like to put the picture, the before picture, and then put the after effect in motion. That way, nothing's edited. In my opinion, you have to have a really solid testimonial base. It doesn't necessarily matter as far as your degree or background, but and then also, you have to connect with those clients too. That's real important because there's a lot of coaches out there. I've seen it. They sell off of, they may have a gifted athlete that they've taken on, and my cousin's pet dog could get that athlete in shape because they have great genetics. But if they can't actually transform that person and help them progress, I would say they're not a good coach. And nowadays, like you said, you have people compete in one show or two or three, and now they're a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I hate it because some of these newbies that's getting into the sport don't know any better, and you get these people that's not coaches at all. They're just in it for a quick buck, and they get a hold of these new athletes, and it's like they just ruin the experience for these new athletes that's coming in because they have no idea what they're doing as far as getting somebody into a prep and coaching them the correct way.
And you're right. And prep is a transition. Some people think they can just go right into a contest prep from general population. And I know you've seen it. The person may have been, and it's nothing critical, but they may have been overweight and they want to just jump in the show. I've had people approach me about it. I want to just do it because I did it. And so I'm like, well, if you want to do transformational category, that's great. But bodybuilding is a very competitive sport in every division that they have. And with that, this newer generation, and I'll watch them compete and then want to be a coach, but they may not have won a show, nor do they have the background. I'm not against anybody becoming a coach. My method of becoming one, I didn't consider myself a coach, like I said, until I got at that time, before I knew about OCB, when I got my first IFBB Pro back in 2017 on a natural platform, I think that deemed me as a coach. But it's a little bit different now because, people can get personal training certifications, nutritional coach certifications. You go to any gym, they're going to say we have certified trainers. But, if they don't understand mechanics or movement or any type of element of experience, then a lot of times it's just theory and just presentation. And so a lot of people are getting fooled by that. I see a lot of that. And then when they take an athlete to the show, sometimes I've seen even coaches to where they had a great athlete, but they detoured that athlete into almost hopping on gear because they could not get that athlete peak properly or get them in shape for the show. And so that athlete has like you said, has a blind eye to, what their potential actually is.
Yeah, I was about to say I have a question because I've been listening to you even before we got on. And you talk about reading, blood work. You're very peculiar. You're using exact terms that you a kinesiology major or something would use. Do you have any background in kinesiology? Did you go to school for any of that stuff? And where did HannahBolics come from? That's two questions. Well, I'm just curious.
Okay. No, I don't. Actually, I don't. I'll tell you my experience. When I did go to college, but I dropped out when I found out I did not have to have a degree to become a personal trainer. I thought I had to go through physical therapy to do it. So what I started doing, I know it may seem sketchy to some, but I still have my campus book card. So, you can still purchase college books. So I would purchase a kinesiology book, a microbiology book, as I got further into nutrition, I noticed it was not macros and it wasn't just, supplements. It's more so functional things that need to be addressed. I'm not a big believer in blood type diet or things like that, but I do believe that, all your hormones are formed they're formed through the blood, and they bind into proteins, and that's your endocrine system. Everything, your endocrine that's everything that's hormonal. Anytime there's something wrong with the blood, typically the blood has to travel through every organ in the body, and even has to be filtered through the liver and kidneys. And so as far as the blood work and understanding, your sex binding hormone globulins, things of that nature, those levels, you better understand how the body works. And so a lot of people don't understand the difference between how a natural should train and eat versus how somebody enhanced trains and eats. I'm not a big advocate for even like the enhanced side of things. However, I do study the banned substance list and things of that nature, just to know what those boundaries are. And then also, anytime I've asked someone for blood work, typically it scares them if they're enhanced, because typically I won't get a reply. And so I've helped some enhanced people actually get off of gear and get them to a natural platform. I can work with people that are actually getting the injections done at a clinical site because I don't have to alter the hormones, but I'm a huge advocate for the health side of even bodybuilding, especially with everybody being natural, because sometimes it can be made unhealthy, and a lot of people approach prep unhealthily. Some people start prep too early and they're not mentally healthy, and it could be, it could be their chemical levels in their brain, or they're not physically healthy enough to start a prep. And so that affects the success of someone burning fat, or even retaining muscle, if that makes sense.
Okay, the second part was, where did HannahBolics come from? I get the last name, but was there something that went along with that?
Okay, sorry, I have a tendency to drift. I have a 48-year-old brain, so sorry about that. I get lost in the moment. HannahBolics, well, back when I was competing, and I was seeing some pictures and things like that, as far as my competition pics, people didn't think I was natural. And then when people see that no needle sign, trust me, I've been blocked. I'm blocked by some people. I've been blocked because they thought I was a troll. There's people that's up even in the OCB industry that they don't even know they have me blocked. I'll say hi to them at the show, but I'm trying to follow them on IG, but they have me blocked. But HannahBolics, actually my nickname, they used to mock me when I first was competing, before I started putting on muscle. They used to call me Captain HannahBolic. So it rhymed with anabolic, and they were being sarcastic. When I started putting on muscle, that name just kind of stuck with me. People started calling me that. And so I had for my platform when I was competing, I'm not boasting or anything like that, but I was able to compete very well against non-tested athletes because of just the level of muscle that I built, and to know how to condition it on a natural platform. And so the HannahBolics, they just kind of stuck with me. And so I said, hey, why don't I just call my business that? Because it rhymes with anabolics. The only problem is, like I said, when they see that no needle sign, they're thinking anabolic steroids. And so some people, they don't read my bio. But what I plan on doing this year is I'm going to make probably a separate page and give a little bit more in depth on the roots of things, and, run my page a little differently, because for the most part, if you look at my followers and following, I'm the biggest troll out there when it comes to, since OCB started. They have I think a 7,500 follower limit as far as how many people you can follow. And so I follow more people for the sake of my athletes than I do actually have followers. And it's to see what we're going up against typically, or if I'm a promoter or things like that. So
first call out.
First call out. So we have these two segments, if you haven't watched, where we get into some questions a little bit deeper than the ones we asked. So first call out. Jamal, what you got for us?
All right. As a coach, well, as an athlete, athletes like to talk among other athletes when they don't feel like something is right with their plan, right? Mm-hmm. So what is your take on fasted cardio versus fed cardio?
It depends on the athlete. That's going to vary. I'm not a big, if the person, to me, with fasted cardio, it depends for me. If you have a level of certain muscularity, cardio, in my opinion, does not always burn fat. I have a client, of course, you probably know who he is, Shaquille Whitmore. Of course, he's an IFBB pro. He's natural, like all my people are. But I added cardio to his regimen before he did the Ben Weider championships, before he went over all men's physique. And he actually added lean muscle tissue. And so cardio is a very, very, I would say, loaded topic. I don't think cardio is for everybody, but fasted, it depends on the person. To me, if you do it incorrectly with your nutrition, you may gain or lose muscle. If your nutrition is not balanced with that, if your sleep's not balanced with cardio, no matter what way you approach it, whether it's low intense steady state, fasted, or even HIIT, if it does not fit your body type and genetic make, you can either benefit from burning fat or you can lose muscle, or you can even become fatter through glucogenesis, eating your own muscle. So that's my take on cardio.
All right, my question for you is, I know I asked this question to the last coach, and I think this was the most talked about part that people will come up to me and talk to me about. If HannahBolics had a ideal 3 things that athletes, like an athlete is looking for a coach and they're looking to hire you as their coach, what are 3 things that you think they need to have as an athlete or an ideal athlete for you? 3 things that they should have.
Just off my experience, and let me try to not drift. I think they should have, I prefer someone that's already competed, but at the same time, if I were to put an analogy out, what I've learned, and this happened to me the last 2 years, I've taken on other athletes that were with other coaches and they had some bad things to say about their coach. When I actually talked to their coach and dealt with that athlete, there were similarities. Kind of like if you have an ex-girlfriend or something and you want to talk to, their ex. Sometimes the story is not always, it's not always sometimes that person may or may not be the victim, if that makes sense. And so they do a background check on me, and I also return the same energy also. And so my requirement is, for one, being consistent. 2, drama-free. 3, also just realistically understanding and trusting my process. Like if I'm very radically honest person and open up front. So if I tell an athlete they're not going to be ready for a show, they may or may not like it, but it's for their best interest. And so to me, if that athlete has a good, clear communication skill, and then also is understanding of that, then those are my requirements mainly. To me, an athlete can be built into or groomed into a champion. It just depends on the level of commitment that they're going to put in themselves, and also relying on my expertise to do so.
Okay. So now we're heading into our last segment, which is the last call out. And I know Jamal probably have a few quick hitters, so I'm gonna let him start it off, and then I will follow up.
I just got one for you. So what's the one thing you think is misunderstood about natural bodybuilding?
I think that it's underrated in certain areas. And I learned that when I was in DC. And depending on the person's approach or outlook of how they start, as far as their journey, it can affect their belief system. Like I said, like Arnold or Quinn, my 2 athletes that, were in that overall, I put them in NPC shows first because I saw their potential. And I put them in very, very tough shows against somebody enhanced because I knew they would do well. But a lot of times, like if somebody starts in a natural organization, sometimes, depending on where they start at, to me, that can affect their belief system because they'll compare themselves or misinterpret where they need to be. Like I see a lot of guys, if they'll enter a show, and it could be NPC, it could be OCB, it could be, any natural organization. And they'll think they lack size, but sometimes they may lack development in certain areas. Sometimes they may, I would say, not fit criteria, but their pathway of getting there can be misconstrued if they're not directed properly on where they actually are, on like, even with judges' feedback. I'm real particular about that too. I'm kind of picky about even shows I put my athletes in because of that. And so I think that's the main thing is depending on where their direction is and where they are capable of heading within a 1 to 3 year period and their outcome, not necessarily win or lose, but the directory of that outcome of how they're addressed, to me, that can affect an athlete's total, psyche of where they are or where they need to be. And so I see a lot of athletes that have potential that sometimes get held back. And then I see athletes that have an exaggerated sense and they're normally beginner athletes and they get a pro card. And it's like they rely on the currency of their pro card to be payment towards them winning a pro show. And so I see a lot of those mistakes with that. And so to me, it's from where the starting point is and also, how things intertwine with their belief system of who they, of where they pick and choose to be judged at in other places in life. So.
All right. I'm going to finish this one off. So I have another picture, and I do my research. So I think this is this Shaquille? I know his name is Mr. Symmetry.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Shaquille, Mr. Symmetry. So I know you said you called yourself a coach after your first IFBB win. I know he is also an IFBB pro, natural IFBB pro. And then you have had people compete at the highest of levels in the OCB. Shout out to Arnold. People know him as Cavs. I don't know the other guy in the A class, so excuse me for that.
Yeah, it's
Quinn.
Yeah.
So shout out to him as well. So when you are coaching and you have proven that you have coached people at the highest of calibers, of course, helping people get their IFBB pro card, is the approach any different for your highest athletes all the way down to maybe your amateur athletes? Do you take any different approach? Is the coaching style different?
Yeah. Way different. Like if I had Arnold eat, I'll share with you what Shaquille ate the day of his show. He had like a double cheeseburger and like 3 Snickers before he went out on stage. Hours before he went out on stage. And Ben Weeder, it's a at that time, it's a run-in show. Most NPC shows are morning and night. You've competed NPC before. It's a run-in show, so I had to time that. With Arnold, it's a little different. And Quinn, it was different. Every athlete I've approached with peaking has been totally different. One thing about peaking somebody, though, one standard I do have is if I don't think that athlete's going to be ready by the show deadline entry date, then we just pick another show. And Cavs will tell you, I pulled him out of a show once or twice. The year that he did presidential, he wanted to do, I think, the Scorcher. And to me, if a body's fluctuating and it's not at a steady state of where it's burning fat, or if it's fluctuating between stage lean, there's going to be a problem with peaking that athlete. Because I've ran into those problems before. Some people, though, Quinn, he pretty much coasted into it. Arnold, though, he tended to do better. Like, he gets ready right at the last few weeks, and then he's able to coast. And then Arnold kind of grows during prep. He improves as he does more shows. So this year's approach with any of my athletes is if they're kind of at an amateur level or beginner, then it's a way different approach than what I do with somebody advanced, because as I said before, everybody's body's different. Depending on the level of muscularity and where they fit criteria, that dictates a role of where I want to kind of place that athlete. You know, like I've had some athletes get their OCB Pro card, but they did not have enough muscle, or they had certain muscle missing certain areas where they could not make top 5 at Jordan or at a pro show. So yeah, everybody's different. Every single person, I have a different way of how I approach them. And so sometimes it limits the amount of athletes I take on, but at the same time, it does produce to me a better quality of athlete. So.
Gotcha. Well, that is episode 2. You got anything closing remarks, Jamal, before I close it out? All right. That was episode 2 of the coaching series.
I appreciate you guys. You can tell I was a little bit nervous. I've not been in front of a camera in a while.
Hey, you did great.
You did.
Great episode. You dropped
if I did great,
knowledge,
y'all,
man.
hey,
it was great.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, the thing is that we want this to feel, like you said, we wanted to just feel like a casual conversation. We don't want it to feel like you have to force anything. So this is awesome, okay? So that's episode 2 of the coaching series. We want to thank you again, Eric, for joining us. But I know we will see you at plenty shows this year, because we see you last year. So we will see you at plenty shows, and we can't wait for it. So until next time, guys, peace.